If you go into a game with low expectations and the game manages to meet those low expectations, can you rip the developers? No, really. If you expect the game to be utterly fucking garbage and a second developer is forced to fix something that will be garbage and ends up making a pile of shit, am I allowed to tear into Sledgehammer and Infinity Ward? Of course I can. That's like telling a YouTube owner to go fuck himself. Oh man, Modern Warfare 3 and how horrible this game was. Now, before I begin, I have to confess something about the gameplay in the background. When I was capturing footage for the game, I had a huge party with me of people that wanted to play. So instead of jumping into a lobby, since we had far too many people, we played some fun open lobbies and shit like that. I had no hit detection being the fucking host. So the majority of the rooms that I made were things that I'm horrible at. Sniping, shotgun, whatever, man. I got my ass kicked. By the time we got to play in a normal room, people started leaving and shit like that. I only got in a few games, and most of those were just basically average gameplay. So I actually went into my vault of content. I found an old external drive with all my footage from Modern Warfare 3 from my old laptop. So I borrowed some games for there, which most likely you will see some repeat footage that I probably used before. But frankly, I just don't give a shit. Not when it comes to this piece of shit game, man. But anyway, you can't help but almost feel some sympathy for Sledgehammer with this piece of shit, because after all, this wasn't a fair fight for them. They were put in a position to fail, similar to what happened to Treyarch and World at War, and just like Treyarch and World at War, they managed to create bullshit, along with the collaboration of Infinity Ward. As most people know the history, when Modern Warfare 2 was in season, Activision fired the heads of Infinity Ward, which led to lawsuits, a mass exodus of Infinity Ward employees, the creation of Respawn Entertainment, blah, 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 blah. Infinity Ward was a shell of its former company, and the majority of the staff that created Call of Duty 4 and Modern Warfare 2, they were now gone. There was no way the remnants of Infinity Ward that were left behind were going to create a game on their own. In stepped Activision and designated Sledgehammer Games as a co-creating studio, as well as Raven Software to do all the DLC for parts of multiplayer. Treyarch also even ported over the Wii version of the game. As we all know, anything they touch turns to crap. Take a wild guess which version of the game received the lowest rating. Yep, the Treyarch port to the Wii. See, even when I want to blame Infinity Ward for this piece of shit, I still have a chance to blame Treyarch. Anyways, Sledgehammer was going to build a separate Call of Duty project. They got pulled off of that, and they were now having to pick up the pieces of Infinity Ward's Modern Warfare 2 disaster. The campaign for Modern Warfare 2 was horrible, and it left off ridiculous plot points and story twists and all that other bullshit. Multiplayer was a hot mess with the number of things kids abused, and co-op was a basic rundown story mission concept with only 2 players. Modern Warfare 3 is a gigantic clusterfuck of studios just asking for things to go wrong, and sure enough, things went wrong. Much like Black Ops, it has almost the same exact problems as Black Ops 1. 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and a shitload of things that made absolutely no sense. In addition to the problems the games had, Activision decided to whore out this franchise just a little bit more with the Call of Duty Elite bullshit. That paid fucking service that was nothing more than a gigantic ripoff. The biggest incentive to Elite was that it provided all the DLC packs to you, and since DLC would cost $60 a la carte, you were getting a $10 discount by going with Elite. For most people, the discount was worth it, until they saw how bad this game was. Let's just start with the campaign for a second. Infinity Ward made an awful campaign in Modern Warfare 2 that made no sense at all whatsoever. It was all action with no logical plot. So unfortunately for Sledgehammer, they had to create a story on the heels of what Infinity Ward did in the first game. Do you know how hard it is to write a story based on someone else's vision? No, really. Imagine having to pick up the pieces of another person's story and having to finish it. That was the position Sledgehammer was put into. They had to tie up a convoluted plot, a massively implausible storyline, and do it without knowing what direction Infinity Ward was taking with the third game. Sure, there was some strategists and planners left over from Infinity Ward, but the key players in the storyline development moved on to Respawn. The story itself was just another hot mess like Modern Warfare 2, but at least they tried to make it believable. That's something they get credit for. However, the AI is still abhorrently stupid. The set pieces are for the most part things we've seen before, and they had to go with that shock factor once again of a surprise attack. Call of Duty 4 had the nuke, Modern Warfare 2 had the no Russian level and the attack on the White House and all that bullshit, and in this game you had the chemical attack on London. Essentially, it feels like the same game over and over and over again. When it comes to first-person shooter games, the formula hasn't changed much over the years, but this game doesn't even try to change up the formula a bit. Big gunfights, massive set pieces, a few levels and vehicles or some other novelty to break up the monotony, and lots of explosions. Again, it's hard to blame the people who had to make the storyline to the game. Imagine being put inside of a hole that someone else dug, and now you're being told to dig your way out of that hole. It's a seemingly impossible task. I really don't hold too much ill will towards Sledgehammer and the remaining Infinity Ward staff over that, because frankly, there wasn't much that could be done at that point. You had to finish off the Price, Soap, Makarov plotline somehow, and do it in one game, following a completely irrational predecessor of a game, and do it in the condensed time frame Call of Duty Studios were being pushed into. Co-op wasn't much better. We got the Spec Op missions again, which were okay, but again, nothing special, it's just time filler. We also got Survival Mode, which is a dumbed down version of zombies, but only for 2 players. Essentially, you end up facing endless waves of enemies where you need to use equipment to buy shit to help you survive. It's fun for a minute, but it's not going to keep people coming back. Co-op was never a concern for Infinity Ward games. Call of Duty 4 had the local couch co-op, while Modern Warfare 2 just had Spec Ops missions. So as we see, co-op was probably an afterthought here because they had to get their shitty campaign together and figure out how to unfuck multiplayer. Which leads me to the next part, multiplayer, which is where all the problems are. Oh man, the fucking lag this game had was horrendous, but I'll get into that in a minute. Like I mentioned with Black Ops, all the good things this game did were covered up by stupid decisions. For example, I like the idea of 3-strike packages. It was certainly something different that nobody can argue against. I like that I could apply the different packages to the different classes as opposed to being stuck with one set across all my classes. I also like the fact that now we're finally rewarded for playing the objectives. Capture flag, it counts towards point streaks, or whatever the fuck you wanted to call these shits. Capture headquarters, that counts towards your rewards. Plant, defuse bombs, all of that shit now counts, which was missing from the prior Call of Duty games. This was the first Call of Duty game to implement that logic and has been a part of the series ever since. They added a meter on the side of the screen to see your progress towards a kill streak and the ability to toggle which one you wanted to use at a particular time. Unlike the prior Call of Duty games, you had to use whichever one was the most recently one earned. Point streaks also start again if you earned all of yours instead of having to die in order to earn more. I hate giving this game credit since it's a piece of shit, but even I have to admit these changes are all for the better and have carried over to all the newer games. It's hard to argue against these items being anything but a good addition to the series in which other games have pulled elements from or refined for future games. However, for everything that worked, something didn't. Why did the fucking support package have lethal shit in it? Why was the Moab in the fucking game? Why are tactical insertions still in the game? Care Pussy is still here. Death streaks are still in the game, and now you added this dead man's hand bullshit. 402, or as I like to call Robert Bowling, forever a tool. He got on stage at the Modern Warfare reveal event and said, "Fuck you, Last Stand." Meanwhile, it was added as a death streak, and much like all the cocksuckers at Treyarch, openly lied about that bullshit. Assassin Pro was the top perk to use in the second tier because the other 4 perks weren't necessary to survive, while perk 1 had all the good shit in one group. For everything this game fixed or added, they either kept stupid shit like death streaks or added in bullshit like a stealth bomber to the support package. The guns alone were beyond unbalanced. The shotguns were absolutely horrible before they patched them. By the time they actually rolled out that patch, I already left the game, so I have no idea how the patch actually affected the shotguns after the motherfucker, but for the first few months, they were fucking useless. The Type 95 was absolutely ridiculous, while the M16 couldn't kill shit. How do you have 2 burst guns that do such a varying degree of damage? There was no comparison as to which gun to use. The Type 95 was the supreme weapon out of the 2. It made no fucking sense. The MP7 was a cure-all SMG gun, although with the 6 SMGs in the game, the top 3 severely outclassed the other 3. In terms of rate of fire, damage per second, range, there was no comparison with what the 3 better SMGs can do, with the MP7 having the best damage output in the entire game with very limited recoil and pretty decent range compared to some of the other SMGs and even some of the assault rifles. LMGs were rendered useless because of how quickly you still died in the game. Without quick draw, you stood no chance of getting a shot off compared to a lighter gun and still had to hope someone's aim was slower than yours. Quick scoping was still around as always, and the assault rifles boiled down to the ACR and SCAR once again. Their damage rate and minimal kick, even without that proficiency shit, outperformed all the other weapons. The gun proficiency thing was another thing that was fucking annoying. On top of moving the full rank of your character up to 80 levels, now you need to level up your gun as well. Come the fuck on already, man. This is just fucking absurd. Call of Duty never learned that the endless character ranking up isn't what gets people coming back. Better content, a fun play experience is what gets them to come back. It's a stupid fucking decision to add this gun proficiency shit, especially considering that each gun received its own perk of proficiency to improve its quality. That shit wasn't needed because it was just another layer of shit you have to unlock if you decided to prestige. Speaking of prestiging, we had the prestige token crap, which was like crack to a crackhead. You wanted that sucker to unlock whatever goodie you needed at the time, so people pre-ordered the game and prestiged in prior Call of Duty games just to get an extra prestige token. broken. I wish I could say I spent mine on hookers and cheap booze, but I bought all the additional classes first and then I used the rest for double XP in the final stages of ranking up in this game. It was those fucking tokens that made me prestige for the very first time in Call of Duty 4, which you guys saw earlier in this week when I was low level. It was those tokens that made me play Crap Ops 1 for a few days in order to prestige there, and attempt World at War to at least find a hack lobby to rank me up so I wouldn't have to play that bullshit for a week. 2 out of 3 I did, but man, that shit was a chore to do. But the biggest game killer for me, like I mentioned, was the lag. Oh god, the lag and the lag compensation ruined any enjoyment this game could have had. I remember the first week when this game released, I was ready to throw this piece of shit away similar to Black Ops. And I probably should have done that. The first 2 to 3 days, the servers were stressed the fuck out. I mean, seriously, at this point, didn't these assholes know any better? They knew this was the best-selling franchise, so why the fuck are the servers not tested out ahead of time? How do they not know they needed to have a massive server power to allow this many people to play the fucking game? After the first week, I debated about leaving it, but I decided to give it a chance stupidly. Mainly because this would have been 2 years in a row without a Call of Duty game. When I got into the rooms, the hit detection was hit or miss, literally. Sometimes I had a good connection, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I could kill a motherfucker, other times I watched them walk right through a stream of bullets and stab me in the fucking face. Getting host? No thank you. Unlike prior Call of Duty games where you wanted host for the best connection, this game penalized you for being the host for some reason. They called it host lag, and Infinity Ward was looking into it. In other words, get the fuck over it. The big difference between Infinity Ward and Treyarch is that if Infinity Ward says they're looking into something, that means they're doing nothing about it. When Treyarch says that they're looking into something, that means they're just going to blame PS3 and lie about how things couldn't be done. Neither studio was competent when it came to fixing things, but Infinity Ward learned to keep their mouths shut, while Treyarch preferred to run their mouths and lie to their fan base. Playing in a party also fucked with my connection, and my friends thought I was fucking crazy. If I played 2 to 3 games, the connection was fine. Playing more than 4 games, and all of a sudden my connection dropped, and I was shit out of luck trying to fight off massive lag spikes. It was worthless, and a pain in the fucking ass to play in parties. Having a good connection, which I do, I have a pretty solid internet connection, was a fucking penalty, because lag compensation would have the AOL dial-up assholes running miles ahead of you. By the time you shot someone, they're in a different position when they actually killed you. What the fuck? Why am I being penalized for having a good connection? For that, I'll just upload some videos to YouTube and download porn to bomb my connection and put me on par with people in third world country internet speeds. That was the only way to compete against the lag compensation. At best, this game was inconsistent. And the funny thing is that when 360 players complained about how bad this game played, that's when you knew both editions sucked. You know, with Treyarch games, the 360 version of the game was so much more superior and functional than the PlayStation 3 version, which was always fucking garbage. With Infinity Ward, now both versions sucked. It was almost like, welcome to our Treyarch world, motherfuckers. All those times we said we had a shittier version and people didn't believe us, now the shit was equal again, and this time it was equally bad for both consoles. And those people who didn't believe me about the treatment of Treyarch, you can just ask my buddy, the Big B, will probably be in the comment section here. He ended up being a moderator for the Infinity Ward forums for a short time, but when he questioned Treyarch on all their bullshit, they would ban him. Can you believe that? Infinity Ward thought he was competent enough to moderate their forums for them, but Treyarch didn't like the fact that he questioned their PlayStation 3 version of the game, so they would ban him. That gives you an idea of how these two fucking companies work. For all those 360 players that say that they like World at War and Black Ops 1, it's because you're clueless to how bad they really played. What you experienced in Modern Warfare 3 was the bullshit we went through with all of Treyarch's games. Modern Warfare 3 was very spotty as to when it worked. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes you caught it on a good day, sometimes it was utterly unfucking playable. Treyarch games were like that each and every day. Not just one day, every single day. As time progressed, Modern Warfare 3 got to the point it was unplayable every single day, which made it feel exactly like a PlayStation version of a Treyarch game. And yes, we can thank Theater Mode again for the lag that destroyed this game. As we now learn all these years later, Treyarch loved to lie about that shit and said it wasn't a factor in the performance of the game, but as I said in the 2 Treyarch videos earlier, clearly it was a factor, because all the people in the room who had their content captured each and every time, that had to be saved somewhere. Even though you may have turned off your theater mode, the server still needed to capture your game to provide that for other players watching their theater mode footage. It was horrible. When I hit the final rank in Modern Warfare 3, it was before the DLC rolled out. And it was before they increased those prestige levels to 20 or whatever the fuck. I had already maxed out my rank, and I was pretty burnt out and pissed off at this game. I spent $50 Elite, which wasn't even used at that point, so I just needed a break from Call of Duty. Like each Infinity Ward game, I stopped to play a Final Fantasy game. Another big fucking mistake. Oh man, I already did my video on Final Fantasy 13 too up in this motherfucker. My intention was to take off a few weeks until the DLC season started rolling out. Remember, PlayStation 3 players still had to wait for that shit forever. We paid for a service to get the maps before the general release, and even then, the non-paying Xbox 360 customers got the DLC packs before we got our monthly DLC maps. It was fucking bullshit, and you know what, don't even get me started because I could do a whole fucking rant just on Call of Duty Elite alone. But anyways, much like Modern Warfare 2, the plan was to come back to the game and complete some of the challenges after a much needed break. The game was unplayable, I was frustrated, and other games that were on the horizon were calling my name, SSX and Mass Effect 3. SSX was coming out the end of February, however, Mass Effect 3 actually launched a demo of the online co-op portion of the game in middle of February. In just a few weeks of playing that, I could tell that that shit was going to be fucking awesome. In the SSX video, I mentioned the game released the exact same day as the first DLC pack for Modern Warfare 3 on PlayStation 3. I decided to return to Modern Warfare 3 for the day. I played 6 frustratingly laggy games and then went over to SSX snowboarding and never looked back. Just 2 weeks later, Mass Effect 3 released, and that became my saving grace. I left Call of Duty all for good just to play Mass Effect 3. My frustration with Modern Warfare 3 was so high that I walked away from paid DLC content that I already paid. I came back to play Modern Warfare 3 in only a few spurts. One was to return to get Mission Impossible footage, and not surprisingly, but as soon as I got the footage, I went right back to Mass Effect 3. Later in the year, during the break for Mass Effect 3, waiting for more DLC, me and Hatred returned to Modern Warfare 3 to download all the maps and play some survival a few times on the new maps. I think we played on Sanctuary and those small maps that they added with the 1 versus 1 modes where kids were trading headshots. Whatever. I needed to play the majority of the DLC maps that I played for. I know I played the first 2. I played the one that I downloaded with the plane in the middle of the map or whatever the fuck, the church one, the oil rail, whatever. The majority of the maps, I didn't even play online. Survival, competitive, multiplayer, nothing. I basically pissed away $50 fucking on that Call of Duty Elite garbage and pissed away $60 on a game that frustrated me to no end. And that was really the breaking point with me with Call of Duty. Black Ops the year before was terrible, and that was Treyarch's second strike against them. Modern Warfare 3 was abysmal and easily Infinity Ward's worst game by far. BioWare struck lightning in a bottle with a simple but fun multiplayer, and this led to the decision I made before Black Ops 2 was ever announced. I was not going to buy the next Call of Duty game. On April 30th, 2012, I even had to go back and look up this motherfucker. I made the video that said Call of Duty is now my new sports game and that I will be skipping years in Call of Duty, and oddly enough, people doubted that I would actually skip Black Ops 2. You can go and check the comment section of that video. In the description, I even said bookmark the video because I was absolutely certain I wasn't going to buy Black Ops 2. And guess what? I was 100% correct. I don't care how good or how bad Black Ops 2 was. I don't care what improvements they made. I wasn't getting it. I could not bring myself to paying $60 each fucking year for another goddamn headache, and that was my way of clearing my brain from all the frustration the series was causing. As you've seen with other series that I've showcased so far on the Goodbye PlayStation 3 series, when a games start to frustrate me, I stop buying them. I skipped Assassin's Creed 4 because I was getting tired of the series. I skipped Need for Speed games because I didn't like the products Black Box was creating. I skipped Gran Turismo 6 because it felt the same, skipped Crysis 3 because I wasn't impressed. Now Call of Duty games had worn out their welcome. Modern Warfare 3 was bad. There was no question about it. This is an absolutely awful game to play, and the very few decent things this game created were engulfed by the mountains of bullshit and lag this game had. But as I said at the start of the video, this was going to be expected. Going into this game, if you had high expectations, they were bound to fall flat. 4 studios had to come together to put this shit together like Humpty motherfucking Dumpty. Coming into the game, I expected a copy and paste of Modern Warfare 2, and I was initially surprised in the previews to see how many new items were actually being added. Kill confirmed, strike packages, rewards for playing objectives. What I didn't expect was the game-killing lag. Call of Duty and Modern Warfare 2, they lagged, but that was all host connection and how much ping you had to that person. Here, you lag no matter what, no matter how good or how bad your connection was, but the better your connection was, the more likely you were going to receive lag compensation. More than anything, that's what killed this game for me. On top of the rage I had in myself for stupidly giving Activision $50 for Call of Duty Elite, if anything, the one thing I could thank Modern Warfare 3 for doing was showing that I don't have to play Call of Duty to keep people entertained on YouTube. Instead of playing content that people wanted to see on my channel, I played shit that I wanted to play. Instead of being a Call of Duty player, I got back into being a video game player with all kinds of games that I personally wanted to play. In the end, this is the final Call of Duty game that I purchased with my own money. Many of you know the story behind Ghost, but obviously that's going to be coming on Monday. I may have dreaded playing this game and hated my time playing it, but in doing so, it finally changed how I approach Call of Duty games when they released, and I will talk more about that in Monday's video for Ghost. As for these Call of Duty games, they're finally finished. I got to say goodbye to Call of Duty 4 one last time for being a great game. I got to finally rant about World at War after all these years of avoiding my wrath. I got to noob 2 people one last time in Modern Warfare 2 to show how badly that game was designed. And I got to rage one final time in Black Ops, making me thankful I didn't play that shit for more than a week. Plus, reliving the regret I had in playing this bullshit. So overall, not a bad week, right? Anyways, the final Call of Duty video will be on Monday, and at that point, I'll have to point out the irony in that video when I post that motherfucker up. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit, and Call of Duty week is officially over.